The film opens in Afghanistan during the time when it was an active war zone, and most of its civilians had migrated to neighboring countries. Among the remaining few people, we see a young woman surviving on her own, as her husband, who is twice as old as she, has been paralyzed for the past few months. She seeks solace in taking care of him and venting her daily struggles with him. The following day, she heads out to buy her husband some medicine. On her way, she casually dodges some militants firing and killing each other, as it has become a daily routine for the remaining survivors. At the pharmacy, the shopkeeper refuses to give her more medicines because of her overdue debt, so she returns home empty-handed and attaches a drip to her husband's mouth. Since her financial condition is worsening each day, she decides to visit her aunt, who lives a few steps away from her place and is her only relative left in Afghanistan. When she shows up at her aunt's house, someone else answers the door and vaguely tells the woman that her aunt has moved out. She returns home and shares her pain with her paralyzed husband. She breaks down in tears while expressing that everyone has abandoned them, including their families, who treated them as a burden. Currently, the husband is paralyzed after getting shot during the war since he was a militant. She leaves her husband to check up on her girls, who are starving. Sadly, she has nothing to feed them, and on top of that, their house has no electricity because of the war. At night, she cleans her husband with a wet cloth to prevent sores, as he's always lying on the cold floor. The next day, a doctor arrives at her doorstep to check up on her husband, but she doesn't let him in because of her menstrual phase. In Afghanistan, it is customary for women to quarantine themselves during their menstruation. Hence, the doctor leaves and decides to visit her a few days later. She goes inside to check her husband's gun wound and becomes worried to see it getting infected instead of healing. Suddenly, the nearby mosque announces on the loudspeaker that it is distributing free weapons among civilians so they can protect themselves in their houses, as the war has reached their streets. She picks up her daughters and immediately runs to seek shelter in an underground cellar, where the nearby neighbors also come seeking shelter. A family abandons their wheelchair-bound man outside the bunker after hearing bombs exploding. After a few minutes, the firing stops. The woman worries for her husband, so she runs to check up on him. She finds her glass windows broken and her husband covered in dust. She puts some eye drops in her husband's eyes to kill the dust inside them. Sadly for her, the army sends a panzer into her street, which starts shooting at people. She lies low and runs back to the bunker, where she hugs her daughters after seeing they're alive. Once again, the enemy attacks and kills several people on the street. When the dust settles, the woman returns to her house, which has been damaged pretty badly. She cleans the place to make it look bearable, after which she leaves the house. Some local bandits come to rob her house, but are disappointed to find nothing valuable. They steal the paralyzed husband's wristwatch and his wedding ring out of desperation. They also decide to shoot the old man for no apparent reason, but when they spot his military uniform next to him, they spare him out of respect and leave. When the woman returns to her damaged home, she sees her undergarments scattered on the floor by the bandits. She becomes scared to realize that her place is not safe anymore. On top of that, she becomes stressed out to find her neighbors shot to death by the militants. Exhausted of options, she returns to her aunt's house and begs the new tenant to help her, but the woman acts cold and sends her away. After some time, the old tenant has mercy on the woman and hands the woman her aunt's new address. The woman rushes to the north side and unites with her aunt at a small hotel. The aunt welcomes her and shelters her girls. The woman doesn't know much about her aunt, so her aunt gives her a recap of her life. According to her statement, she was married off at a young age. When her husband found out that she was infertile, he abandoned her at his parents' house, where her father-in-law would assault her out of frustration. She kept bearing it until she lost patience and killed him with an axe. Since that day, she has been living an independent life. The aunt helps the woman by giving her some money, so the woman temporarily returns to her old house to look after her husband. Since she has no resources to move him, she decides to keep coming back to him. She shares her current situation with her paralyzed husband and sits down to pick a bone with him. Even though he can't talk back, she complains to him about spending her entire married life serving him and his family without ever being appreciated or loved. With bitterness, she confesses to her husband that she constantly felt a sense of fear and loathing during her married period, which she shouldn't have. She also calls him out for never being there for her or their daughters. Her statement turns out to be true when we get to see a flashback of her wedding, where she marries her husband's photograph and his dagger because he is busy serving in the army. Her aunt is also at the wedding, justifying that marriage for the sake of the woman's secure future. In the present, the woman has nothing else to do, so she sits down for a venting session with her husband. It is assuring for her since he can't talk back to her or display misconduct. She vents that her life was full of traumas before the wedding because of her father, a man, and her life after marriage was also full of problems because of her husband, who is also a man. As she narrates her life before marriage, we see flashbacks of it. Her father is a useless person with the habit of getting his chickens into fights and losing all his money on bets. Once penniless, he returns home and beats his wife. The woman narrates that one time, her father lost the bet and sold his elder daughter to the man he lost the bet to because he didn't have the money to pay him. The woman feared her father would use her next, so she fed his chickens to the cat, which scratched her face and left a permanent scar. She even shows her paralyzed husband the scar on her face in the present. Once again, she complains about her married life and the fact that she was impregnated against her will. Her venting triggers her past traumas, which leaves her with bitterness and hatred for her husband. At last, she ditches him and returns to her aunt's place, where her daughters are being taken care of. She shares with her aunt that she's going insane talking to her paralyzed husband, as she has no one else to lean on. To divert her mind, her aunt tells her the tale of syngué sabour, aka the patience stone. According to ancient folklore, the patience stone is a stone to which people tell their deepest secrets and traumas to set themselves free. The aunt makes an analogy out of this folklore by comparing the woman's paralyzed husband to a patience stone, which can absorb the woman's pain and trauma without reciprocating. The next day, the woman forgets about the pain her husband has caused her and returns to look after him out of pity. She bathes him with a wet sponge and willingly kisses him for the first time in her married life. She makes her husband the patience stone and shares with him about the night of her marriage, when he forced himself upon her against her will. She also expresses the emotions that she felt because of his forceful actions. Suddenly, she's interrupted by the doctor, who has come to check up on her husband. She has no money to spare him, so she sends him away. Simultaneously, she watches some militants marching towards her house, so she quickly hides her husband under pillows and cushions. When they arrive, she pretends to be a female escort living alone so they don't assault her. Instead, they judge her for being impure, spit on her, and leave the house. When they leave, we see the woman hiding a knife, indicating that she was ready to attack them upon being provoked. The woman returns to her aunt, who is a part of a brothel and sells her body for money. She asks her aunt why men don't force themselves on escorts. Her aunt smiles and explains that men feel dishonored to do it with an escort, so they go for pure women instead. The aunt asks her to stay at her place for the night, but the woman fears her husband might run out of his serum. She returns home with some supplies and tends to her husband while having a constant fear of something bad coming her way. That evening, she tells her husband that she wishes to share some darker truths with him, but before that, she must catch some sleep. The next day, she wakes up to a banging on her door. When she checks up on the door, one of the bandits from yesterday barges inside. She had lied to the bandits about her being an escort, so the bandit throws some cash and forces himself on her. Once he leaves, the woman runs to clean herself, as she feels disgusted by the event. Despite the trauma, she gets reassurance to see money because she really needed it. She uses the money to buy some food and medicine for her husband. Being able to buy things gives her a sense of independence, which changes her mind. When the bandit visits her next, she willingly gives herself to him for money and makes a profession out of it. Due to this new habit, her mood also lightens, and she laughs for the first time while discussing the bandit's performance with her paralyzed husband. Along with that, she slowly starts to realize that the bandit is actually a considerate man, unlike her husband, who practically assaulted her every day by doing the deed against her will. The next day, when she returns home, she finds her doors and windows fixed. She realizes that the bandit has fallen for her and is trying to help her. When the bandit comes to see her, he expresses his need to be heard and seen. The woman takes off his shirt and discovers a burnt mark on his chest. He shares the tragic story behind the burnt marks, revealing that the military commander adopted him and abused him every day to let out his frustration. Hearing his painful story, the woman hugs him and comforts him, which brings the two of them closer. The next day, the woman's lover leaves a bag of fruit on her doorstep. Inside the bag, she finds a gold chain, seeing which she truly becomes happy. In the final act, she drops a bomb of a confession on her husband, revealing that she tried to abort both her daughters, who were conceived by strange men from her aunt's brothel, because she knew her husband was infertile. The old man breaks out of paralysis to choke the woman out of disgust, but she stabs him with the knife and kills him eventually. She smiles to see her new lover at her doorstep and truly feels free from her traumas after getting rid of her husband. Here, the film ends.
Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more awesome recaps.